Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Farmer. Just wanted to take the time to show you guys some interesting information about the Hudson Valley, a place that I like to call home. It's a place that I've lived all my life, and although I didn't appreciate it growing up, I have come to love all that this beautiful area has to offer. And I'd like to just show you guys a few things that make this area so great and interesting. And although a full tour would take far too long, I would like to guide you through a very quick peek of the area's history and a few of their influential figures. On this short guide, I'll share some facts about three distinct periods of Hudson Valley history. First of which would be the period belonging to when the Native Americans populated this area. Then I'll go on to the Revolutionary War and all that made this area very influential in that war, and I'll close with some information about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of the presidents of this country who grew up here, right here in the Hudson Valley. First, I'd like to talk to you guys about the Native Americans in the Hudson Valley. Now, the greatest influence of Native Americans in this area came from the Algonquin Confederacy, and they were a people that were connected together through a common language known as Munsee, which is an Eastern Algonquin language. Now, the Algonquin Confederacy spanned from just north of Albany, which is cut off by this map, west into Massachusetts and south into Connecticut, and south further beyond the scope of the map down to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, there is evidence of artifacts and other archaeological evidence that shows that these Native Americans and their ancestors did populate this area for thousands of years before any European influence. Now, the first of those European influences in this area were the Dutch. Henry Hudson was the name of an explorer who was traveling up the Hudson River seeking a shortcut route to China. That route is known as the Northwest Passage. It was something that all the European powers of the time were seeking in order to shorten the time it took to get to China and not have to travel the dangerous course around the tip of Africa or the tip of South America, which caused much death and destruction to anybody who tried. Now, from 1609 to 1644, the Dutch controlled most of the Hudson Valley from New York City up through present-day Kingston and up to Albany, New York. During this time, they called their colony the New Netherlands Colony. And it was during this time, unfortunately, that the Algonquin Confederacy, with one tribe in particular belonging to the Wappinger tribe, which is located on the map right here, kind of central. They were located mostly on the eastern side of the Hudson River. And at this time in history, because of the Dutch influence, much of their culture was being eroded until finally they were forced from their lands in 1664. They were forced from their lands through a series of conflicts known as the Esopus Wars. The Esopus Wars were fought between the Esopus Indian tribe, which is located right up here on the map, and between the Dutch colonists at Wiltwyck, which is current-day Kingston, right here on the map. They were fighting over land and territory and differences that accompanied the fact that they were so close together and so different in culture. The First Esopus War began on September 20th, 1659, and lasted for a little less than a year. This war had very little in the way of loss of life, but many Esopus Indians were captured and sold into slavery. This and the fact that the Esopus did not cede any land to the Dutch led to greater tensions, which came to a head in the Second Esopus War. The Second Esopus War started on June 7, 1663, with a surprise attack made by the Esopus on the colonists in both Kingston and the newly established village at present-day Hurley, New York, which is located right here on the map. This war was much more bloody than the first and eventually led to the Esopus ceding all of their land to the Dutch in May of 1664. Some other interesting facts about the Native Americans in this area can also be seen on this slide. One of which is Daniel Neum, which is shown right here on this plaque, and this is the statue of him. That's right here in the Hudson Valley. He was one of the last chiefs of the Wappinger Indians who fought alongside the Americans in the Battle of Kingsbridge on August 31st, 1778, and he never returned from that battle. So there's there's lots of influence of the Native Americans on American culture. They fought on both sides of the Revolutionary War, and some of the Indians in this area fought and lost their lives in that conflict. Going into the Revolutionary War period, the Hudson Valley and the Hudson River in particular was a very important strategically to both the Americans and the British. In fact, George Washington said here that whoever held the Hudson River and New York City controlled the safety of America. And that's because the Hudson River was such an important shipping route and way of traveling throughout the colonies, and of a way of bridging the New England colonies with the Middle States and getting down further along to the southern colonies. One of the more important battles that took place in the Hudson Valley was the battle for Fort Montgomery, which happened in September of 1777. It was unfortunately a strategic victory for the British that was soon undone by the Americans the following month. The Fort Montgomery lies on the western side of the Hudson River, 60 miles north of New York City. And in September 1777, the British attacked it in hopes of splitting the American forces in two and gaining access to the Hudson River. And like I said, the British were successful in that battle and were able to take the fortification, and they were able to undo a chain that was put up by the Americans that would, from at West Point across the river, that would slow down or block travel by British ships up the river. Now, the following month, like I said, the Americans did overrun the British and force them southwards back to New York City, which was under their control at the time. But however, the British did burn the fort before they were forced out. Moving on through history, I'd like to talk just a little bit about FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was the 32nd President of the United States, born right here in Hyde Park, New York, in the Hudson Valley on January 30th, 1882. His birthplace is actually just a few miles up the road from my home that I've lived here all my life. FDR is widely considered one of the greatest presidents of United States history. His leadership brought the country through two of the most devastating events in world history, the Great Depression and World War II. Now, from FDR back through time, perhaps even before recorded history, the Hudson Valley has been home to many different peoples and has been a backdrop to many important events. And just to recap, I'd like to say we learned about the Native Americans and their impact on the Hudson Valley and the Wappinger tribe in particular. We learned a little bit about the Revolutionary War and the impact that the Hudson Valley and Hudson River had, and one battle in particular being Fort Montgomery. Also, we learned about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was one of the most important presidents of United States history, who was born right here in the Hudson Valley. The Hudson Valley is home to a long, rich history with places, events, and people who helped shape our country into what it is today. And I hope to have piqued your interest in learning more about this beautiful area. As you can see here, I have some of my sources that I used for this presentation. Some of which is battlefields.org. Others are the FDRlibrary.org. Other ones are NewYorkHistoryBlog.org, MountGulian.org, AngelFire.com, and HMDB.org. All of these sites are great information for anybody who'd like to learn more about the topics covered in this presentation. Thank you.